All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Hi to everybody who's on today. Welcome to Richmond Inno's virtual State of Innovation, the Future of Health Tech. For anybody who is unfamiliar with Inno and what we do, we're part of a growing network of sites. We're currently in 14 markets, and we're committed to covering and connecting local technology, startups, growth, and innovation. Richmond Inno covers the local ecosystem via daily stories, a twice per week newsletter, and quarterly events, which are virtual for now. Check us out at richmondinno.com to see what we're all about. And don't forget to sign up for The Beat, our twice a week newsletter. The Beat is definitely the best way for everybody to stay plugged into everything that's impacting the local innovation economy. In it, you're going to get the local tech and startup news you need, the analysis you won't find anywhere else, info on upcoming events and cool job openings, obviously much, much more. And it's all presented to you in a pretty fun conversational manner. Before we get started, I want to thank our founding partner, Activation Capital. Without them, this event wouldn't be possible. And here to say a few words is Sarah Maddox, Outreach and Community Affairs Manager at Activation Capital.
Hi, thanks for joining us. Activation Capital is located in Richmond at the Biotech Park, and we have a mission to grow life sciences and advanced technology startup companies across the Commonwealth. Activation Capital engages and connects the many influential players in our innovation ecosystem and drives the development of Central Virginia's startup ecosystem and high-growth entrepreneurship through events, programming, space, and a number of funding opportunities. We're a founding partner with VCU in the Health Innovation Consortium, and Lighthouse Labs is a program of Activation Capital. Before COVID, we saw the value in focusing on health innovation, and COVID has certainly shown an even more increased need for innovations in healthcare. There's so many things happening in Central Virginia as it relates to health innovation. We're excited to be highlighting some of those activities today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. All right, now let's meet our panel and dive into health tech in Richmond. Our first panelist today is Erin Powell. She's the Executive Director at Lighthouse Labs. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks for having me, Elise. Glad to be here.
Next, we've got Nicky Monk, Director at VCU Ventures.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
And finally, Lennox McNeary. She's the co-founder and Chief Operating Officer at ArchiveCore.
Hi, Elise, thank you. And I'm going to apologize. I'm going to mute myself a lot because there's a jackhammer right outside my office. Timing's perfect.
No problem. All right, we're going to dive right into the panel. I'm going to start with Erin. How has COVID-19 changed the landscape for health tech in Richmond and Virginia as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I see a lot of familiar faces on the attendee list as I'm scrolling through here on Zoom. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Lighthouse, we are a startup accelerator here in town, and we take companies from startup mode. You know, typically they have a viable business model that has been proven to some extent, and we help them scale. So we've been doing this for 8 years. This is my dog Violet, who also wants to talk apparently, but we've been doing this for 8 years, and we just finished our 9th cohort this fall and getting ready to do our 10th cohort in the spring. So we partnered with the Health Innovation Consortium and VCU Health to offer a healthcare track to founders that were interested in healthcare innovation. So this is all really timely. You know, like Sarah said, a lot of this was in the works pre-COVID, you know, so a lot of the planning for programs like Lighthouse and some of the initiatives that we had with the Health Innovation Consortium, the wheels were spinning on that pre-COVID for sure. But I think the most obvious kind of disruption in everyone's lives, of course, has been the switch to telehealth. And you know, when we were planning for the Lighthouse Labs Accelerator, you know, we were trying to figure out, okay, how many of these companies are going to come in needing FDA approval? You know, we know that this is going to take a long time. We know that there's lots of hoops. We've got lots of experts like Nicky, you know, to be able to help these founders with FDA type requirements. But I think what surprised us most, you know, we accelerated 5 companies in the healthcare accelerator, and only one of those required FDA approval. So Lennox is on the Zoom today. She's a founder that went through our program. Her company does not require the FDA approval. I see Ankit with Round Trip on as one of the attendees. He's a Lighthouse alum. His company does not require FDA approval. So I think that, one of the trends that we're seeing, especially with telehealth and telemedicine, is that the path to starting a business in healthcare has the potential to be a little shorter because of a lot of the innovation that's going on. Whereas, traditional paths requiring FDA approval in med device and pharma, obviously have a much longer trajectory to be able to build out your business and get to revenue. So that's one of the major trends that we noticed. And of course, this industry was ripe for disruption, and we're excited to be on the forefront of that.
Great. Lennox, do you want to kind of follow up just and give a little bit of information on, your experience with the accelerator?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. So I'm a physician by training. And so watching healthcare innovate rapidly during COVID has been fascinating. I think we were all pushing for telehealth to come aboard. And as Erin said, that's been a tremendous growth. And then in my specialty, really looking at neuro rehab, so virtual reality, electrical stim, and robotics, things like that. I think with COVID, that's going to really push more innovation in that area. But for us, I was in the accelerator. I was really grateful to Erin and to the whole VCU crew and HIC for helping us have those conversations with VCU. It was a fantastic learning experience to be able to work with them and talk with their C-suite and learn how the process of innovation goes. And especially in a time where it's so tough to really get into a hospital, it's not like you can just walk in and start talking to people. And so being able to have those introductions and learning opportunities through Lighthouse and the HIC was just incredible for us.
Definitely. And so what have been some of the biggest challenges when it comes to being in healthcare and health tech this year specifically? And I'll let any one of you take that one.
Well, I'll jump in there. I guess I'm the one that hasn't talked yet. I think from the perspective that I'm coming, which is with VC Ventures and HIC, and just for those on the call that may not be familiar with the Health Innovation Consortium, the Health Innovation Consortium was started by VCU Health, Activation Capital, and VCU to really bring a couple key things together to support innovation in healthcare, and that's the end user, which is VCU Health, which is sometimes when you're innovating in healthcare is the toughest thing, is to get that end user feedback and really engage in a meaningful way with those folks that are going to be using your technology. So bringing them in a meaningful way to these early discussions, and having a funding arm as well, to the Riverflow Growth Fund to help us look at what technologies really are solving a significant problem and are fundable, and putting a pathway in front of those founders that's very founder focused to say, what do you need at what time, and what resources can we bring to bear to get you to that point where we can fund you and we can put you in a clinical setting. So that's really what HIC is about. And in some of the biggest challenges this year, well, I don't know that there's anything that hasn't been a challenge this year, honestly. Like, everything has been a challenge, but it has shown a couple things, how much we can accomplish when we have a common issue, right? COVID has been something that everyone is dealing with, and it's affected healthcare in a very significant way, from the bottom line of the health system to how we deliver care, how we educate the population. So I think that it's been both a challenge at every level, but also an opportunity for us to use it as a case study, to say, we all came around specific problems as a community and across different health systems even, and really focused on the population. And I think it's a testament to what healthcare could be.
Okay. And, obviously health tech didn't just come around because of COVID. It predated the pandemic. So what are some overall challenges surrounding health tech as a founder or an industry leader?
Lennox, you want to take that one?
I don't want to, if you had something else, do you want to add anything else, Nikki, before?
No, go for it. Go for it.
So, you know, as a founder and a physician, I think a couple of the challenges are interesting. You know, the stakes are so high in healthcare. If I was innovating a new ice cream and wanted to do anchovy flavored ice cream, you know, the worst thing I'm going to do is maybe make some of my customers unhappy. In healthcare, if we do something wrong, it's patients' lives. And so that barrier right there to innovation, it makes things move slowly. It's fascinating to me how challenging it can be to even change something simple like a workflow, to add an order to an order set in a hospital system. And partly it's a patient safety issue, making sure you're in line with all the clinical practice guidelines, which makes sense. But then you've also got the financial implications. And so as a physician, I may say, this is a great innovation. It's gonna make people healthier, but who pays for that? And where does that fall in priorities with the system and with insurance companies and all the payers? And so that's a tricky piece of it. And then I think just the number of stakeholders involved. A lot of times you have a lot of competing interests. And then also it's just this bureaucracy to get things to move through that sort of process with 8,000 people to give you permission before you change a light bulb. And so I think that's one of the places where HIC is so helpful, because they do have such a clear path to try to help move innovation forward and really look at it with all the stakeholders in mind.
I'd like to add to that too. I thought that was really well said. And you know, I feel like I'm being a bit of a naysayer because my answer to the last question was, what isn't difficult about COVID? and it's kind of the same answer for this question. What isn't difficult about healthcare? You know, you've got in healthcare, it's a lot of times high risk, long-term, capital intensive. Like all the big things you look at are tough. And it's a really highly segmented market too. In my past life in startups and in venture capital, one thing that I noted was, geez, you know, you map out a pathway to market, right? That has all the elements you need. And then something shifts, you're doing discovery and you figure out, okay, I need to pivot a little bit, in my setting of care is different. I'm actually, my target is long-term care. That wipes out your business model completely. It's a completely different business model based on setting of care, because the payment is different. It's just a very highly segmented market. That's just one example. So I think that it is a very difficult space to innovate in, but like those things that are high risk, the payoff is huge, because while the risk is high, you know, we're talking about saving people's lives, you know, so the impact is pretty significant and pretty, you know, you can get pretty passionate around this area really fast, because, you know, when you talk about improving lives, it's our lives, it's the life of our family and our neighbors. So I think that it's really easy to talk to people about how significant getting into this market is.
Erin, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
The only thing I would add, I mean, it's been touched on, but you know, this is an industry that while it may move slow, what I love about startups is that startups do make an impact, you know, and when every founder comes up with an idea, no matter how big or small, and, you know, Lennox is a great example of this, and lots of physicians are innovating at the bedside, you know, they're innovating if they're in an emergency setting, or they're trying new things. And, you know, I think that while there are barriers to entry for healthcare when it comes to innovation, there are very, very innovative, you know, bright people on the inside that are running these organizations. So, you know, I think it's a great opportunity right now to see those innovations that are going on inside the systems. You know, Nicky's group is also a great example of this, kind of colliding with the activity that's happening in the startup world. And it's exciting to see that. And in Richmond, we are extremely fortunate to have a healthcare cluster here, if you will. You know, there's lots of people that have expertise in this area. There's lots of support that VCU can give. So, you know, Richmond is a prime place for people that want to make innovative progress in healthcare. So it's exciting to see.
So what is the biggest or the most important lesson each of you has learned in, during this year?
I'll start. There's a lot. I mean, during COVID, I feel like it's been one big sprint on the innovation side of things, not only helping innovations that can tackle problems, but figuring out how to help innovations that can tackle problems and kind of smoothing that pathway towards impact. And I think the lesson that I have learned, kind of big picture lesson, is the power of collaboration. And when you look at everybody around you as a potential partner, and I think I'll point to Erin Powell is a great example. We could have started our own accelerator, but why would we? We've got a nationally ranked accelerator here that has a lot of prominence in the country, and leveraging them to help build out a healthcare focus was one of the smartest things we did. And I think that our community is doing a great job in that collaborative way, to be founder first, right? To focus on the founder first, not focus on, hey, let's promote HIC or let's promote Lighthouse Labs, let's promote VCU Health. It's about the founder and it's about the innovator, and making sure that they are solving real problems and we're helping them bring that to market where it can help us all. So I think that's the biggest lesson learned is how do we do that effectively, and how do we do that outside of COVID too.
Yeah, I will happily, Nicky and I were just talking about this on the phone earlier today, but the sense of community, while I think always had a really strong presence in Richmond for whatever reason, has just really been amplified. And, we were able to still experience that sense of community in a virtual environment. I mean, I'm sitting across a Zoom from women who I speak to on a very frequent basis, and we've never met in person. So it's kind of crazy, when you think about it. But I think that this disruption in all of our lives has just really leveled the playing field. It's made it so that we all have an immediate understanding of, what the other is going through. We get it when the jackhammer is going off outside. We get it when the dog barks. It's really just leveled the playing field for all of us. And I think that, like I said, Richmond always had this sense of community. I know when we first partnered with Nicky, our questions were, okay, one, can we recruit talented founders? And, the short answer to that is absolutely. We can recruit talented founders to want to be a part of this. And two, can we recruit mentors? Because, so many people have walked in the founder's shoes that have been a part of the Lighthouse program and, have very, very valuable advice to give. And we didn't have that many healthcare specific mentors in our database before we launched this cohort. And we were able to recruit over 30 mentors, into the last 12 weeks. And these people do it for free. They do it because they believe in the power of entrepreneurship. They do it in addition to their day job. Lennox was able to work with one of our talented mentors throughout the program. So I just keep seeing examples of community, whether it's coming from, like Nicky said, looking at everybody as a partner, to leveling the playing field for people that have ideas. And, we're a little biased over here, of course, but we think that being a founder is the bravest job on earth. And, you're going out there, you're identifying a problem, you're taking a huge risk. And, for our city and our state, be willing to put them first. I think that just speaks volumes to our commitment to solving some of these problems. So lots of community is what I've taken as a takeaway over the past couple months.
I'll echo that. I mean, just being part of Lighthouse, I was completely blown away by the community, both just Lighthouse itself, but then when we reached into Richmond as a whole, and even Virginia. I'm down here in Roanoke. I don't know if I said that, but I'm down here in Roanoke. But I went to med school at VCU, so I lived there in Richmond for about 7 years, so that's kind of second home for me. But I think, like they've both said that I think the thing that has been the biggest lesson for me is really, again, the power of teamwork. In rehab medicine, we really do focus on working as a team. So that's something I'm used to. But I was just amazed back in early March when we saw the power of community among physicians, not just in Roanoke or Virginia, but across the world. And the power of social media, it gets a bad rap, but sometimes it can be used for good. And I think early in COVID, the physician groups that came into being on Facebook, and we were getting our medical information on Facebook of all places. We're not, the librarians always say, don't Google your information, but we were getting it on Facebook, and it was coming from doctors in Italy and Spain, and then Washington State and New York, and gradually getting closer to home as things were changing, and we were learning what best practices were, what to do, what not to do. And anytime somebody had an idea, it was coming out then. And even now, we are still going over new medications. We're talking about vaccines, and physicians are educating each other. My colleagues who are infectious disease and immunology are making sure we're all up to date on everything with the vaccine. And so they're educating us so we can educate our patients. And so that power of community education and learning and using each other as a resource in the medical community has really, really impressed me, and just reminded me again why this is such an amazing and special gift to be able to be involved in lives of our patients like this, and to work together as a team. As they said, is as a team, because this affects us, it affects our neighbors, our families, and everyone in our community. And so that's just been really powerful for me.
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself there. Those are all really great takeaways. So, with Lighthouse Labs' recent health tech accelerator and the DEIC's focus on energy and green tech, it seems like the startup ecosystem in Richmond and in Virginia is starting to focus a lot more on these more industry-specific founders and startups. Do you all see that continuing? And if so, why?
Yeah, when I first came on board, I talked with a lot of founders, both, people that were part of Lighthouse and people that hadn't gone through, some of the ecosystem programs. And being a founder can be lonely, and you can oftentimes think, okay, well, why am I the one that's, always having to solve the problems and always having to know the answer? And so founders want a community of people that are like them, so they want a community of people that are at a similar stage, that they can ask questions to. They want founders that are a stage above them, right? So that they can say, okay, let me see what the next step looks like, so that once I get over this milestone, I'm confident that I can get there. And the same, I heard the same feedback about industry, which was, there are lots of basic business principles. Look, like all founders need to know how to do their financial projections, how to write the business plan. There are lots of Lighthouse alum that give back to our community and talk about, different topics that are applicable to all businesses, regardless of what your industry is. But that added layer of, hey, you're also in the healthcare industry, or you're also in the education industry, just adds another level of familiarity, somebody that you can go to ask questions that are going to have the answers. So I've been excited to see this trend, and I think it may continue.
Yeah, I think that in an area is complicated and complex is healthcare, and I'll just talk from that vertical specifically. But it really helps to focus in, and we do have a lot of things here to take advantage of as a community to become to attract more talent. Really, people will come here if we pull these things together and really focus on the founder. And we have the major distribution group, we've got the hospital systems, we've got talent, we've got all this expertise that's focused on healthcare. So really focusing in and capitalizing on that, I think will help not only to attract folks, but some notoriety to the region.
So, I would say most startups, start with a good idea. But what does it take for a startup in the health tech industry to succeed beyond just having a good idea?
Aside from a little bit of crazy.
Yeah, yeah. A little bit. I think I'd push on you for that one.
A healthy dose of crazy.
I think that, I would say connections to make sure they've got a good idea. I think a lot of the things that we see, especially the ones that are early on, but even the ones that are later stage, like really, are you solving a problem, and is that problem significant enough that people care about solving? So that's a tough question to ask, because a lot of times when people come with their technology, it's their baby, right? And I like the notion of being obsessed with the problem, not the product, and I think it was Matt Gamble, who a lot of you probably know, who had the line, never fall in love. So never fall in love with your product. You got to be obsessed with the problem. And I think that that's something that that it just takes to succeed, that obsession with the problem, and kind of keeping a focus on that. Of course, there's all the regulatory and all that stuff that comes into play, but I think that its core is really what I would say.
Yeah, we focused on that. I would totally agree, Nikki. We focused on that a lot during the accelerator, and we had a number of companies that came in that had done a lot of validation. I don't think that you ever stop talking to your customer, though. And that's definitely a lesson that our founders took away. One of the other kind of most popular sessions that we ran during Lighthouse was just learning how the finances flow in the healthcare system. And, I mentioned a minute ago, there are some basic business principles, but this is another example of where having an industry focus really helps, because the way that finances flow in the hospital system are different than the way they flow in other businesses. And, understanding that as a founder and being able to have some insight there, Nicky and her team were able to organize a C-suite panel that Lennox mentioned with the CFO of VCU Health. It's not every day that you get to sit down and pick her brain about how the finances flow, but that was certainly, at the end of the day, sales solve all problems in business. And so if you've got a great idea, you've validated that it's a good idea and that people will buy it, then the next step is to figure out how to build a replicatable sales process. And understanding how the finances flow within the healthcare system, I think is critical.
Lennox, you were nodding enthusiastically.
I would echo. I mean, the C-suite talk was just amazing, and I think we would have all sat through another 4 hours of that if they had been willing to talk to us any longer. It was just the amount of knowledge that we were getting was incredible. Mm-hmm. But someone who's worked in healthcare basically my entire adult life, I still don't understand how all the finances flow, because as I said a minute ago, things that logically make sense to me do not seem to make sense in the healthcare world. And I think that's one of the places where I feel like coming at it from inside, it can be helpful, because healthcare is weird. It's the finances and the culture, and our business models are strange. Like I said earlier, insurers don't really pay us to keep people well. Some of the things that really make logical sense, you're never going to get an okay for somebody to do that. And we also are, I think anybody in healthcare just figures out how to do what needs to get done. And we come up with some really interesting workarounds for things, and understanding how the culture works and how that change management piece. And sometimes that incremental change management is what you have to do to get buy-in from people. You can't just throw something external on them and expect them to adopt it. And I think electronic medical records have been a great example of that. When they wanted physicians to change our workflow to work with an electronic medical record, that's not how you get enthusiastic buy-in from people. It's a weird animal. And so I think having people who can help guide you through that and push you on things that you think are true. Even yesterday, we were meeting with our developer, and he was saying something that from a business standpoint made absolutely logical sense. And my partner and I were saying, we agree with what you're saying, but that ain't going to work that way. And so you have to know the players involved a little bit, I think.
Well, and I think, sorry, I just want to make one more comment on that. I think that, you know, that's another trend that we're seeing in Lennox as a testament to this, right? Someone who knows the inside so intimately, you know, identifies a problem and has the guts to go and start a company to try and solve it. You know, and I think that you're going to continue to see that as well in healthcare, you know, people that are on the inside, they're seeing the issues, they want to solve the problems, they want to make it better. And we need more Lennoxes in the world, you know, we need more people that know what the issues are and can identify them and come up with innovative and creative solutions.
So does working in healthcare and the health tech space make it easier or harder to raise venture capital?
Yeah, I think this is healthcare is probably one of the hardest industries to raise venture capital, and because of the risk profile of health technologies, and because you know, you want to find investors that really understand healthcare and the nuance of it. And there's not many groups that do, but I will say, I'll kind of riff on what was just said by Erin. I think that the founders like Lennox that come from a specific background and you know, really understand the problem, because they, you know, they dealt with it and believe enough in the solution that they're creating that they're jumping, and they're focused on now the innovation portion. So I think that makes it a lot easier, I think, for investors to invest when they look at the team. Typically investors invest more in the team than they do the technology. And so I think that helps. And once you find that initial investor, typically it makes things a whole lot easier because everybody knows everybody in that world.
Lennox, do you want to speak, you know, specifically to any fundraising experiences you may have had up to this point, if you've had any?
We're in the middle of this. I'm chuckling because we're in the middle of it. And yes, it's hard. It's really hard. You know, when we started Lighthouse, I kept saying my plan was I just wanted a good fairy to come in and give me, you know, a couple $100,000, and didn't see that actually happening, but it was what I would like. You know, would still like the good fairy to show up, because it's hard, especially right now with COVID. People, my understanding is that angels and VCs are funding people that they've already funded before, but they're a little bit wary of making new investments. And so it's out there, but I think it's a little harder maybe to find than it would have been a year or two ago. So I'm grateful to have people in my corner like Erin who can help guide me through this process, because that is not something we learned in med school, and it's been a real education.
Yeah, and I will say the investor community in Richmond and really throughout the state, you know, Nicky kind of mentioned that they all know each other, and, you know, they do. They also are just so willing to talk and have conversations, and, you know, everybody has their own process, right? They have their own timeline for applications and that type of thing. But they are also, the investors are big contributors to the community. And, you know, Richmond has historically, you know, known a lot about real estate investment and, you know, other kind of more traditional investment vehicles. But it's been exciting to see, you know, organizations come together like Riverflow, you know, and other independent angels in the area that are learning more about technology investments and learning more about healthcare investments, because they're different, you know, and the word of advice that investors always give to each other is invest in what you know. And so, you know, I think that's one of the reasons that you're seeing those groups have different industry investment thesis as well, you know, like a Riverflow or Meta Angels out of DC, that is a group of physicians that make, you know, medical investments. I think that you're continuing to see that as well. So, you know, I'm always very optimistic and, you know, want to remain hopeful. You know, we did have a couple of teams coming out of Lighthouse be able to make significant progress on their rounds from investors in the Lighthouse community, but you know, it takes time. It takes time, and it's a relationship just like any others. But you know, hopefully these companies like Lennox, for example, are taking advantage of customer acquisition opportunities to gain capital. So, you know, getting pilots started, getting health systems on board, and, you know, that's really what investors want to see. In addition to the team is what's the traction.
You also see a lot of, lately, a lot of health systems creating venture arms to get involved and to really participate in innovation for a variety of reasons. So that's hopefully will make an impact too.
For a founder who is maybe new to, you know, the startup ecosystem or just fundraising in general, where would you tell them to start?
My advice would be to find a mentor who's done it. You know, there's some formula out there, you know, in terms of, and there's a ton of stuff that you can Google, obviously, about what components go into a good pitch deck and all of that. But, you know, it was interesting to see, because of course, every company that interviewed for Lighthouse has a pitch, you know, but those pitches changed so dramatically, you know, from when they first did them, you know, back when we were doing the interviews in the summer to when the program ended in late November. And, you know, a lot of that was, you know, one, they learned a lot more about their business. Two, they learned a lot more about where they should focus. And three, they just got a lot of feedback. So, you know, they got a lot of feedback from investors, from peers that have been there, done that, from people in the healthcare community. They learned how to kind of walk the walk and talk the talk, if you will. So, you know, if you're not involved in a program per se, you know, there are lots of people out there that have raised money. There's so many resources, you know, even a lot of the big VC funds have podcasts and different talks about, you know, what they're looking for. And so it's never too early to start to listen to some of those things and be connected with people that have done that before and can give you some feedback.
And real quick, before I go on to the next question, we are going to be taking audience questions in a couple of minutes. So if you have any questions for our panelists, drop those into the chat box or the Q&A box down at the bottom. And so this will be a question for each of you. Just kind of, you know, we're wrapping up 2020. It was kind of a crazy year for everybody in a bunch of different ways. What are you most looking forward to in 2021? And, you know, what can others who are, you know, Lennox, people who are maybe watching your startup or, you know, people watching Lighthouse, what do you think those people can expect?
What I'm personally looking forward to most is the COVID vaccine. I'm really excited that my friends who are on the front lines right now are going to be getting vaccinated. So anyway, try not to cry. As far as business, we are in discussions with our first initial customers. So that's what's really exciting to me is acquiring our first customers. We've done an initial pilot, but really getting this rolling out and starting to change the face of professional credentialing in Virginia and in our region over the course of the next year so that physicians can start taking care of patients faster, because that's what we need. And especially right now, as we are losing healthcare professionals rapidly, this is a time where we've got to get our workforce going as quickly as we can to make sure our patients are taken care of. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah, so for Lighthouse specifically, you know, I mentioned at the beginning of the call, but we're going to be doing our 10th cohort. We're also undergoing a rebrand coming up in 2021. So it's almost like, you know, Lighthouse 2.0, and we're really leaning into making sure that everything that we do is founder focused. We just revamped our application process. There was a question in the chat, but we took our application down from 60 questions to 18. So, you know, we're really looking to help founders get connected to the resources that they need when they need them, because there are so many resources, not only in Virginia and throughout the state, you know, but Lighthouse is a member of the Global Accelerator Network, which represents over 1,000 accelerators throughout the country. So there are lots of connections that we can help make for people based on what their needs are. And so, you know, I'm personally just looking forward to, getting, back in person, shaking hands with all of the people that are on this Zoom and others who I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, and just continuing to make some of those connections, because you never know where a phone call, an email, LinkedIn introduction is going to lead somebody. And it's just really exciting to see those stories. And I think that leaning into the amazing community that we've already created is just going to continue to help Richmond and the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in community thrive as we go into next year.
And as Erin mentioned, those Lighthouse Labs cohort applications are open right now until January 8th. And they can find those on your website, right?
That's right, yep.
Cool. And then Nikki, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of, what you're looking forward to next year?
Yeah. Most of all, I'm looking forward to having a glass of wine with the ladies that are on this this call in real life. It'd be great. But in the Health Innovation Consortium, we're pretty new, right? We're kind of a startup ourselves and iterating to make sure that we're obsessed with the problem, and that's founder based, right? That's what are the problems that our founders are having, and how can we smooth that pathway out to market. And what I find exciting is the notion that so much has changed in healthcare in 2020 because of COVID. And I think that it's not going to go back to where it was before, and really kind of taking a beat and focusing on where's the puck going, and what innovations are prime right now for taking us through not only COVID, but have post-COVID applications. I think that's pretty exciting, because there's an opportunity there to really leverage what's going on right now to get things moving, and to get really impactful innovations in the market and have them there after COVID is gone.
Awesome. We do have one audience question, and the audience member asked, how do you see issues pertaining to diversity, equity, and inclusion playing out in the health tech space in the coming years?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important question. And that's something that I think all health systems need to focus on and say, how are we taking care of our population? And especially VCU, this is kind of top of mind for VCU Health in particular. And I've heard a lot of the leadership talk about this. It's, how are we dealing with population health, and how are we ensuring that there is health equity, right? And I think the answer is innovation. We have to look to innovation to say, how are we solving these real problems? And looking at it from different lenses, not so much, how are we prescribing and how are we treating patients when they're in the door, but how are we really looking at this holistically to make sure that everyone has access, everyone has what they need to be able to be healthy, and that's going to go beyond healthcare. And that's going to take some innovation and some collaboration, which I think have been kind of themes of this entire seminar. So it's another thing I'm excited to start focusing in on both during and after COVID.
All right. Well, that just about wraps up our panel today. Thank you again so much to Lennox, Nikki, and Erin for joining us. It's been a great conversation. We hope that everybody in the audience has enjoyed. And actually, we have one more question, and I think we have time for it. So if you guys are game, I'm just going to go ahead and ask that one for you. This question is about addressing risk. It says, our product is a VR program for substance use disorder. End users are inherently a high-risk population by definition. So our clients, which are the providers, are concerned about risk if a client ODs while participating in treatment. So how would you address that risk?
Yeah, I'll chime in here. We had a similar company actually, and I don't see the name of the person in the chat, but to whoever that was, congratulations on the creation of your idea and your company, because obviously this is a hot topic everywhere. And so definitely appreciate you going out on a limb and tackling this problem. But I think, you know, look, de-risking, there's risk inherently in everything that we do, and especially as a startup, there's risk. My advice would be to continue to have the conversations, because the more that you talk about it, the more that you address the elephant in the room with your customers and also your end users, the more that you'll come to a conclusion about how your product can help de-risk, you know, some of those fears that might be in the market. So, you know, that would be my advice, would be to keep talking to providers, keep talking to customers, to kind of peel back the layer of that onion, to help you make informed decisions about how to carry your business idea and your company forward.
All right. And now we will wrap up. Like I said before, again, thank you to all of our panelists for being here. And thank you to everybody in our audience for joining us today. If you have any questions later on, feel free to shoot any of us an email, find us on LinkedIn, and we're going to have a recap of today's panel up on Richmond Inno, hopefully later today, and that will include a full video of the event. Happy holidays to everybody. I hope everybody stays safe, and thank you again for joining us. Have a great afternoon. Bye.